Hi, I'm Justin and welcome to the Landis Look, where we take an inside look at the world of real estate. And today we're going to take an inside look of whether it's better to buy or to rent. But what we're going to take an inside look at is not the rent versus buy calculator. So if you want to get a rent versus buy calculator, you Google it. They're all over the internet. They can make them, you can find one a lot fancier than what we could probably make for you. So we're going to look behind the calculator at some things that the numbers don't always show up. Because one thing I know about those rent versus buy calculators is you can make them say whatever you want. If you put the right numbers in, it's going to be way better to rent. If you put the right numbers in, it's going to be way better to buy. Now, obviously, the financial piece is a big piece to whether you should rent or buy. And on those calculators, the biggest variable, because this one overcomes basically everything else, is appreciation. So if a property appreciates a lot, then it's almost always going to be better financially speaking to buy, because your money is typically leveraged. If you're getting a mortgage, you're not paying for the whole thing in cash. You're putting down a small percentage of the total asset, and then the total asset appreciates. Thus, the leveraged result of your down payment or your investment is huge. So if you think the property is going to appreciate, or if it does appreciate, then financially it's almost always better to buy. But what about the practical side of it? Because no one knows that. I mean, no one knows whether it's going to appreciate or not. When people were buying in 2011 in Atlanta, not a lot of people thought, man, we're about to have 20, 30% appreciation for a couple years, but we did. And when 2006, not a lot of people thought, hey, 3 years later, this property may be worth 30% less than it is now, but it was. So here are some pieces on the financial thing that I think to consider. And the biggest one is if you're currently renting and something breaks and you're like, oh, I'm just going to call the landlord and I'm so thankful that I can. You can't do that when you buy a house, right? When something breaks, when there's maintenance that needs to be done, you have to take care of it. And you can have things like a home warranty. You can buy something where the systems are new and things are new and make yourself less likely to have those expenses. But that can happen. A tree could fall in your backyard and you have to replace your fence or you have to replace your deck, and you either have to pay for it or pay that insurance deductible. And so that's a big piece. If you're like, hey, I don't have the financial margin month to month to take care of some things that might come up, even if you can qualify for the payment, even if you have enough for the down payment, or you're like, maybe I could use a down payment assistance program and not make a down payment, in my opinion, you need to have that margin available each month. It's not a humongous amount, but you got to have something each month to put aside so that you can do things that need to be done to the house, because that's what happens when you own a house. You have things that come up that need to be done. The second piece of that is there's a timing piece that the calculators, they show in dollars, but they don't show in real life. So yes, the transaction costs in real estate, they can be substantial. And so if you're buying a place and selling it 2 years later, you have transaction costs on both ends that eat into your return. And you also are more susceptible to the market because you haven't had a lot of time to pay down equity. You haven't had a lot of time for the property to appreciate unless you hit those 1 or 2 great years. So you have that timing aspect where there are the financial challenges, but there's also just the effort challenge of it too. Buying and selling real estate isn't as easy yet as buying and selling stocks, where you just go online, you log into E-Trade, and then a couple minutes later, the stock that you purchased 2 years ago is gone, and now you move on. It's a little bit more effort to buy and sell houses. And yes, it's effort to move if you've been renting a place, but it's more effort when it's your own place and you have to either gain or get rid of the asset. So that's the second thing to consider on the timing that doesn't show up in the calculator, is there is an effort involved in it that if you're moving twice in 2 years buying and selling houses, you're compressing that effort into a small period of time, where if someone does it over 5 years, you had a lot of enjoyment between those transactions. So the third thing that I think a lot of people overlook, and this is one of my personal favorite things about owning a house, is like Taylor Swift says, this is my place, we make the rules. And there's just something great about owning a place that you can do whatever you want with. You can paint it red if you want. You can put landscaping in. You can improve it to just your taste, or you can improve it to add value to it. You can let people come and stay with you. There's just a lot of, in my opinion, personal benefits that don't show up on a spreadsheet, that don't show up on a rent versus buy calculator when you own your own place. Now, you can see the opposite side of that, and you might say, hey, this is my place. I have to do things that I don't have to do when I'm leasing. And that might be a reason for you that, hey, it isn't right for you to buy a place and it's better to lease, because the things that I see as a value, that I have the ability to do these things myself, that you don't want to do those things, and then you don't have to if you're leasing. There is a little bit of a financial component to this as well. I would say it's very rare that I go back to somebody's house that we helped buy their place and they haven't done something above and beyond to the place just to make it their own. And usually there's some cost to that. Even if you're doing the project yourself, there's typically some cost to that. And those are things like, hey, if you're renting a house, you probably wouldn't do the additional landscaping that you did up front in your own place because you wanted to make it yours. You're probably not going to change out the light fixture in a place that you're renting for a year when it works perfectly fine, but you might do that to make it feel more like your own in your own house. And so those are some of the things that I think just don't show up in a spreadsheet. The ability to make the place your own, the effort that goes along if you're not going to be in a place very long. And one thing I should say with that is, if you want to keep the property for a long time as an investment property, which I absolutely love, turning your first house into an investment property, then you're not selling it if you move out in a couple years and you have a short timeline for actually living in the house. But if you're not going to do that, and you move in a couple of years, that's a big one. So I think those are some things to take into account if you're considering rent versus buying that the calculator doesn't show up. Your specific situation probably has other factors to consider as well. And that's one of the things we love to do, is to help you think through those and help you figure out from experience of what we've seen other people do, is it the right decision to rent right now or is it the right decision to buy? And that's what we want to do when we discuss this with people, help you make the best decision. So if you need help with that, drop us a message like so many people do, give us a call, send us an email, and we'd love to help you figure out, is it better for you to rent or buy, regardless of what the rent versus buy calculator says. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.